Good morning and welcome to the Elgin County Budget Committee. It is January the 30th, 2024 and 10:51 a.m. and I will call this meeting to order. Next order of business is the approval of the agenda.
Be it resolved that the agenda for the January 30th, 2024 Budget Committee meeting be approved as presented.
Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Deputy Warden Jones will move and I'm going to pick on Councillor Hens to second that.
Because I'm just sitting in, I can't vote on any of these things.
I would recommend not, but I would say that because the chair is a magnanimous guy, if you have any questions along the way, we'll certainly entertain them. Perfect. Thank you for that. All in favor from committee members? That's carried. Thank you. And before we carry on a little further, I want to welcome members of council who are also sitting in here for this presentation. So thank you for being present. It might speed up the budget process when it gets to council. Adoption of the minutes.
Be it resolved that the minutes of the Budget Committee meeting held on November 29th, 2023 be adopted.
Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Hens and Councillor Sloan will second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I'll remind committee members of disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. And I don't see any. We have no delegations, which brings us to section 6, reports briefing. So 6.1, Director of Financial Services, the 2024 budget continued. We turn it over to you, Jen.
Through you, Mr. Warden, to members of the committee and councillors present. We're going to continue with the 2024 budget at this time. So we'll go to the next slide. Things that we'll talk about today were outstanding items from the November 29th Budget Committee meeting. The final 2023 assessment from the Municipal Property Tax Corp has been received. That was received on December 4th. Was supposed to be received on December 4th, but was actually released on December the 11th. The assessment includes the growth and changes to the rolls for all of our municipalities that have occurred since the 2022 roll was released. And the assessment will be discussed today as we discuss the levy and impacts of the 2023 growth. We'll talk about the expected social services increase for 2024. We received that from the City of St. Thomas, who is our partner in the social services delivery of that service. And their approved 2024 budget included an increase for us on the social services. That part of the budget increase is $174,000, and that has been added to today's budget numbers. Southwestern Public Health, we received their budget and letter in Appendix A for your review. We'll talk about that on the next couple of slides after. And we have a letter from the Minister of Finance that was also included regarding taxation policy changes that may affect our ratios in Appendix B. And based on that letter, there's no indication that the ratios need to change this year or that they're introducing any new tax class that we want to entertain at this time. So staff are not recommending changes to the ratios at this time. We'll review some adjustments and updates that happened since the last report that will affect previously received department presentations. And we'll talk about corporate activities and services departments that were not received. This is utilizing the final assessment that was received, calculating the levy increases for 2024. The preliminary tax rate change will be presented with some possible options for the committee, and changes to insurance and other line items will be presented. And then we'll talk about some discretionary items, including full-time equivalents that the Budget Committee was interested in hearing about and seeing at that time at the last meeting. So next slide. An article that was dated August 17th, 2023 outlined that the government had cut its support of public health funding from a 75-25 cost sharing formula down to a 70-30% cost sharing formula. So the municipalities were picking up a little bit more of the share of the cost of their health units. Following the outcry, the province backed down on these retroactive cuts and offered some mitigation funding for some help, some transition into the new formula. That funding was considered temporary, but was continued through 2023. Minister Sylvia Jones then announced a return to the 75-25 funding formula and would be increasing the base funding for public health units by 1% per year for 3 years in 2024. And that article was taken from CTV News. Next slide. This year, the budget, we did an analysis then of where we are with the public health unit budget. On page 29 of their budget, they provided a 2023 budget share or 2023 budget of $18.8 million. Looking at what the share should be, the ministry should be picking up about 13 million. They're actually picking up 12.6 million, making their share from 70 down to 67%. And this was in 23. And then the partner shares were supposed to be 30%, but we're actually coming in at 33%. So while Elgin did pick up their 24% share of the budget, we're picking up more of their budget than what we're supposed to be picking up. So that's in essence where we are with that budget. In 2024, they are asking for $20.5 million. So that's a significant increase of about 9%. For that, the purposes of the calculation, again, the ministry should be picking up 14.3 million of that budget. In actual fact, they're picking up 12.7 based on what they're supposed to be, what they've said they're going to fund, which means that they're actually picking up 62% of the budget and not 70%, or even in the same amount as their last year, which was 67%. So now the partner shares are 38% of that total budget. Elgin is again picking up their share of that percentage again at 24% based on population. However, it's increasing exponentially based on the erosion of the ministry share. So at this rate, it's not expected that the 1% that is promised by the ministry will catch up to the promised 75% share. And that the ministries are then, the ministry's contributions are then falling back on the municipalities in order to fund that. Next slide. So in the 2023 budget, we're just going to talk about how this is affecting Elgin's budget at this time. There was some wording passed in their resolution that indicated that there may be further need for additional funding from the Southwest Public Health. And though they had given us a budget of 1.1 million, there was a potential that they could be coming back to the table for as much as another $500,000. At that time, we added that additional amount into our budget in order to ensure that we had it covered. And as council knows, they did come back for 2 additional asks of 160,000. So that ended up putting us approximately $1.3 million last year in funding. So our county budget is set at 1.7 million based on historical need and some contingency that we had in there. So for this year, we only need approximately 97,000 in order to get us up to the 1.8, but we do not have an additional contingency now for anything that comes forward going into 2024. So I had some conversations with some municipal treasurer partners that have concerns that there does not seem to be a cap on how this is going and whether or not there needs to be something, what can we do? And then coming to this group, asking, do you feel that we should be setting up additional contingency? In what approximate amount? And then what are the possible steps to contain increases? So these are some concerns that we do have. However, once the budget is passed, according to our agreement, I understand that we do have to follow through with our funding as it's approved by the board there. So I don't know whether we can provide additional direction or support for containment, but that may be something that we want to consider.
Any comments on, we're going to pause right here and Deputy Warden,
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. Well, you've heard my frustrations in the past and nothing has really changed in that regard. Province has mandatory programs that we have to do. There's no choice. Majority of what Southwest Public Health does is within those mandatory programs. I would say there is, I believe the needle program and the drug issue is outside of that. But I think there's going to be some reluctance around the table to pull that out. That being said, I know Jennifer's brought her concerns forward. I'm pretty sure the treasurers from the other districts are doing the same thing to their reps as well. I know there's some changing attitudes around the table as to how we're managing this. So to be determined what happens in the near future, obviously I've been put in the vice chair position. I'll be speaking with the chair in the next week or two to discuss some of these issues. It's frustrating. Province has put, it's a download. It's pure and simple. It's another download. But how we manage, is there an ability to reduce the required programs? I know Southwest Public Health is looked at as one of the higher echelon health units in the province as far as delivery.
Mhm.
That comes with a cost. So
Okay, I understand that. Yeah, I get that. Guess I'm going to look to you for some advice here. Is there a role for not the budget committee per se, but a recommendation perhaps from the budget committee going back to council in sending correspondence to the minister suggesting that they're not meeting their obligations, calling them out on it? Or is this something that's best left for the board of directors of Southwest Public Health? Like, I would support what Southwest Public Health Board would like. I don't think we want to be out of step with them.
I know Southwest Public Health has sent, I think all the health units have sent correspondence
Right.
regarding that, hey, when are you going to come back to the table and step up to your obligation? But the responses have not been positive. So
It's interesting that the Bear Pit session at Roma, she stood on stage and,
Yep.
or sat on stage and committed to that
Well-
75-25 agreement, didn't she?
someday, I guess.
Well, I'm just wondering, do you think it would do any good for us to add our voice to the chorus?
It can't hurt. It is.
We can always put that recommendation back to council and see if they accept that. Like, yeah,
It's a frustrating process. And of course I missed the first year of that process. So it's
Yeah.
coming on back
Yeah.
into the mainstream again.
Yeah.
I think with future asks coming forward midstream of the year, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a big pushback around the table on that one, but how that, it's,
yeah, they got away with it last year, but I don't know how, it's pretty hard to come back and justify it again. So I think that's why it's being built into your budget process to look after it. I am aware also that there were enough contingencies put away last year. They had an anticipation, staff did, that there was something coming. Not to the magnitude of what was anticipated, but still it was coming. Yeah.
I
Right.
guess the other issue is, I missed the meeting with regards to amalgamating health units because we had that meeting with Mr. Flack at the same time. Bernia was there. I'll get updated on that. But Sylvia Jones's and Minister Jones's comments were focused around getting back to the basics of the immunization of elementary school students, getting that program back in order. No mention of amalgamation, but that could have been, like, she stayed away from that, so that could be an indication there. We don't know.
Right.
I have very grave concerns about another amalgamation because we lost last time. Cost us more money. There's two new public members on the board of Southwest Public Health. Now we have 13, 5 of them are public members. When I started 5, 6 years ago, it was 1 public member. If you amalgamate it with another board, equal size, you can't have 26 people on a board. That won't function. So what happens? Elected officials get dropped, public members stay. So your balance of power tends to lean towards
The public appointees.
people that bleed blue.
These are provincial appointees, are they not?
Yes, correct.
Huh.
And we didn't ask for them either.
No. Just as a sidebar, and I know we're getting a little off track here, but I know Blaine, you did attend that particular meeting with the minister. Was there anything that you care to, I didn't get there and Grant didn't get there.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. There was a couple of items discussed but it was a pretty high level information session. They stressed that these are voluntary amalgamation. They are not being legislated. You're not being instructed to amalgamate. So I think that was certainly the item that I took away the most from that is they really stressed that there doesn't seem to be a big movement to amalgamate these. It seems to be more testing the waters right now to see if people are interested.
Okay. Mike or Andrew, anything to add? Yep, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Previous conversation about voicing our concerns.
Mhm.
I think that's appropriate at any time. It gets me thinking, Jennifer spelled it out very clearly. They're not doing what they say they're going to do. They've committed to 75%. Maybe they have a math problem and we have to point that out to them.
Okay. Andrew, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So we discussed that they came to us last year, and the comments around the table were that we might not be as receptive this year if they come to us again during the year. Do we have the ability to say no?
I do not believe we do. So you're right. What is any recourse that we have? So I think the only recourse we do have is to get on board and lobby, trying to make sure that the province is living up to their obligations. But your point is well taken. Yeah. Todd, as an observer, you had your hand up, please.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I think it's extremely important that the community of Elgin County realizes that this is not a voluntary thing. Us giving money to Southwest Public Health is mandatory. We don't get an option on it. And currently we're looking at over a 1% increase in Elgin County's budget just to cover the increase on Southwest Public Health. When we continue down this road, Southwest Public Health's overall budget is creeping up on the total cost of what Elgin County's budget is. Like, we're not far from that when we look at it. So I think the community needs to realize what our cost is and determine if there's value in that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your comments. Okay. Jenny, you've got some notes along there. I think there's support around the committee to recommend to council for an advocacy letter. I'm seeing nods. Okay, but thank you for the comments as well. Okay, let's move on.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Next slide, Stephanie. So in the next area that we are going to speak about is the budget adjustments. So we had some adjustments come forward since the presentations from the departments. One of them in community and cultural services related to museum. The museum proposed 10,000 for a discretionary item related to memberships that was removed. Additionally, the budget committee, as presented to the budget committee, there was some wording in the presentation that most special projects such as digitization and collection work in the museum and archives will be funded through donations. And since the presentation was made, a contracted position has been added to be funded through donations received in year and offset by previously received donations such as the Bushel Estate. This contracted position has no impact on the levy. So on the next slide, this was the original item budget presented to council, and you'll see there's no revenue there. The wages are 6,000 and there was a $10,000 increase. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that we've added revenue for donations offset by wages, and that the 10,000 was taken out for a net decrease to the budget of approximately $10,000. On the next slide, previously presented to the committee was the Elgin County Library budget. In here, we had found that one of our leases that we grant to our libraries or pay to our municipal partners had not been indexed properly by the CPI. So there is an increase on the expense line from 24,000 on this slide to the next slide of 26,000. So that can accommodate the additional cost, and that is also in the current budget. On the next slide, we had to do an adjustment on the prior year start position for 2023 under ambulance services. We found that one of our budget numbers had duplicated itself during an uploaded, and therefore the amount that we had previously reported as a savings of 378 was incorrect because it had a duplicate start. This does not affect the current year operating in any way, nor our funding partners. But on the next slide, you'll see that when we drop that, the surplus does go away, and that changes our our position for capital to be an ask of 83,000 for a total change in budget for 457,000. So-
Okay. Stopping right there for a moment. I was catching up.
Yes.
All right. Can we slip back to cultural services and libraries? Has the wage adjustment been bumped up to the 3% or? is it
No,
staying
not in the
2.5?
slide. That's
Okay.
at 2.5, yes.
All right. Thank you for that. Any questions on the ambulance?
Next slide.
All right.
So as mentioned, sorry, Steph, one more. One more. There we go. All the reported adjustments reviewed on the prior slides have been captured in today's budget numbers so that you're aware. All reported changes are reflected in Appendix G, and Appendix G contains the operating capital plans in a very detailed manner to provide backup numbers for all the budgets presented to date. And also attached to these Appendix G will be attached to the budget document, which is Appendix F, for reference purposes once the budget is finalized and posted on our website. So next we'll talk about corporate services and corporate activities. These are two departments that were not presented to council or to the budget committee before today. Corporate activities, who we are and what we do, why we do it. Corporate activities takes a broad view of items that are not contained within any one department. These items are including mandatory legislated essential services that the county supports in partnership with outside agencies, such as Southwest Public Health that we talked about, social services that we discussed, and debt taxation. Those are the items that come into this department. Corporate services are for internal services that aren't specific to any specific department, such as insurance, sort of an overall broad insurance for the county, external legal services, main building joint costs, such as office supplies and postage services, which we have as an efficiency. We have efficiency of scale to just have one line item for those instead of having multiple line items throughout the different departments. And so separation of these activities allows staff to focus on their specific department budgets and not areas that are sort of broad overarching for the county. And as needed, staff are able to access the items on this line item or in these departments, such as legal services as needed, office supplies, and postage services as needed. So how did these departments take into consideration the budget survey results? Managing our expectations related to tax rates is a huge one for us under corporate activities. This houses the levy, the PILs, and other revenue streams related to areas that support departments and their work. The majority of respondents of the budget survey requested that the increase of taxes be set between 0 and 4%. And also we heard from respondents that they did not want their taxation to go to increases such as donations. So today we'll talk also about discretionary funding and non-discretionary funding and provide relevant discretionary areas of funding for review at today's meeting. Next. How did these departments take into consideration inflationary pressures? So consumer price index October over October, just for your refresher, was 3.3%. And that's what we base a lot of our contracts and increases on. And where possible, line items are not increased and spending is contained within prior budget limits. Some line items represent shared services, as we discussed, like the public health unit and social services, where budget increases are approved externally. So we don't have a lot of say in those matters. And then where line items that are increased lower than the CPI should signal that an efficiency is found in that area or that any increases will be contained within the prior year budget. How are your departmental priorities linked back to the service delivery review, council strategic plan, and other corporate departmental plans? For the strategic plan, ensuring investing in Elgin is one of the items, ensuring funding for various initiatives in the service delivery review as departments implement their daily work plans is part of the corporate activities and corporate services departments. Growing Elgin, this department facilitates debt, reviews taxation, incentive funding, and has brought forward possible revenue streams such as DC charges in the past for council review. Serving Elgin, support shared services and modernization initiatives to enhance community connections is one of the areas that we focus on in order to ensure everyone gets to do their job and can do it efficiently. Next slide. How are your department priorities linked back to the service delivery review and other departmental plans? So we ensure that many initiatives are in the service delivery review require increased services or shared services with municipal partners. And within corporate activities, it's necessary to also ensure that they have proper funding to support all of this business that we plan to do. It also includes one of the items that we're looking at is the debt for Terrace Lodge for the refinancing and repayment of that capital project. So that's a large $36 million project that we're keeping our eye on interest rates and making sure that we will be prepared to take that on in the future. Other corporate documents, the annual budget survey assists us initially in guiding our department priorities, and we do that early in the process. Also, external legislative partner budget documents determine necessary support required by Elgin in order to fund those mandatory services. So under corporate services, there is a small increase of $40,000. The increase is for insurance costs, 18,000 in insurance costs, a small amount for banking charges. The majority of that relate to point of sale costs for some of our departments that use POS machines, but not all of them. Memberships, there's a large increase in memberships, but we did do some catch up on some of our memberships. They were behind being updated in the budget, and some others were moved into that department in order to track better costs. And also this year, our audit services contract expired. So we did go out to RFP late last year and secured our auditor, and these services have been adjusted to reflect the new rates. So that's also included there at $4,000. Next slide. Contained within the corporate activities department, as we talked about, are the taxation, levy, payments in lieu, supplemental taxes, write-offs, revenue, and debt. And with all that, growth is an annual factor that will affect how much levy needs have to be increased in order to further the county's budget. In recognition of the fact that the county does not have development charges, council created a growth reserve several years ago in order to recognize that and set new growth aside from prior years. This practice is expected to support the county's future additional budget pressures that will ultimately result from the growth that's being experienced. Next slide. So we'll do a review of growth in 2023. The county did have a large assessment increase in 2023 in the commercial class. You can see that in the chart below, 2.5%. Came in almost 2.6% or 2.5 million. The reality when this happens is that appeals are possible, and in this particular scenario can be retroactive. I believe that is up to 3 years retroactive. Reassessment, we're suggesting that staff, just a minute. Sorry. We are suggesting that we would put aside 1/2 of this unusual assessment growth into a reassessment reserve until we can confirm that some of this new assessment base is not at risk of change, and that all other classes that showed consistent growth are not at risk and could go into the growth reserve. We could also set aside 1/2 of the growth of the new commercial class into the growth reserve if that's what council would like, or the committee would like. So today we're going to present with 3 options. 3 different tax rates will be the result of that. And so this particular one is option 1, and this is where we would set aside 1/2 of the commercial class, all of the new growth, and then create a new reserve for reassessment for the county. Next slide. This option 1 does follow in line with what council's previous practices are. So to set aside your prior year new assessment into a growth reserve, we've compiled all of the budget slides after this using option 1. That doesn't necessarily mean that's where you're going to land, but that's where we had to pick something in order to move forward on the budget. So the 2023 levy was set at 43.1 million. By setting aside these items, you would be increasing the tax levy to 48 million, and the levy increase would be approximately $5 million this year. That would put us at a levy increase of 3.79%. overall for the county. Our assessment is $9.5 billion. Next slide. If we were to do this, as we said, option one is 1.3% of growth from the commercial going into a possible reassessment. All growth from all other classes based on the 2023 assessment would go into the growth reserve, and no new commercial class assessment would flow into the 2024 budget. This would set the residential rate at $25 increase per 100,000 of assessment. Our average house assessed value in 2023 was $239,000. So it's approximately $58 per household based on that. Next slide. The proposed budget for corporate activities would then look like this. We'd have an increase of 4.2 million. We'd have an expense increase of 2.5 million within that operating of 1.7. And then we do have some decreases in capital, which would land us at a total increase of 1.9 million. On the next slide, we have some further breakdown of what that looks like. So using option one, council's historical growth is reflected in the revenue for the levy, the PILs, the SUPs. We did have a decrease in our OMPF of 49,000, and interest income, we've added about 350,000 here because we haven't taken out any debt, but also interest rates are still very high, which we thought at this time they would be lower, but they're not. And then we do have some rent increases. This is for ambulance stations and White Station. This is based on the 3.3% CPI. And then we have, in the past, we had some redevelopment funding from the Terrace Lodge project. This funding is not expected to continue into 2025. And so we have decreased expected revenue from that, which gives us our 4.2 in revenue. If we go on to the expenses, the large amounts here, social housing, childcare, and income maintenance, we said from our city partner is approximately 174,000. The health unit, we talked about on our budget side, we only need another 100 in order to meet their expectations as presented in their budget. Interest expense, we did have a higher amount in there, but due to the delay of taking the debt out for Terrace Lodge, we can reduce that for this year. And next year, we will increase that again. The growth reserve related to the increases, right now it's set at 720,000. In order to add this year's growth plus the commercial, we need another 1.3 million to be set aside in that reserve. Accommodations for WSIB, we're suggesting that those go up. Our costs have been increasing over the years, and we are now also setting aside a liability assessment reserve, which is a future liability benefits reserve for that purpose because we are a Schedule II employer. And then the new property assessment reserve would be $1.2 million set aside, which would then give us an operating difference of the 1.7 as outlined. On the capital side, these are the items that are no longer needed to be funded. We funded them in 2023. Some of them have not been completed yet, so we will carry that budget forward into 2024 to ensure that those are completed, but we do not have to raise those funds again for the purposes of those projects. Under corporate activities, option number 2, if we were to allow half of the new assessment from commercial class to flow into the reassessment or flow into the levy, that would reduce the need for some of the levy increase that we are seeing on the other option one. So in this case, the planned use of growth would be about 647,000. We would set aside growth in the growth reserve to be the 750,000 that was regular growth plus a 1.2, or sorry, the other 647,000 from the new assessment, and then we would create a new reserve, reassessment reserve as we had indicated before. Next slide. If we do that and we allow some of that growth to flow through, we would be able to reduce the levy to $47.5 million. And we would be able to have an increase of tax at 2.39 or 2.4%. Just so you're aware that this is below the rate of inflation, October over October at this point at 3.3%. And the average home increase would be $15.81 per 100,000. So option 3, in this scenario, we would create the new property reserve. We would utilize half of the commercial growth, so we would use the other half to flow into the budget. And we would set aside just what we consider to be regular growth of $750,000 into the growth reserve. If we do that, you can see that the amount of tax at this point would be 1%. That would be the necessary amount that we would raise the levy. And the levy would be $46.9 million. On the residential tax rate, it would be an increase of $6.6 per 100,000 of assessment. So just a recap, option 1 would be a tax rate increase of 3.79. Next slide, stuff. The levy amount would be 48.2. The amount to the growth reserve would be 2 million. The amount to the reassessment reserve would not change. It'd still remain at 1.2. Option 2, 2.39 or 2.4 would be the tax rate increase. 47.5 million would be the levy. The amount to the growth reserve would be 1.4, and the amount to the reassessment reserve would be 1.2. Option 3, 1%, 46.9 million, 754,000 would go into the growth, and then the reassessment reserve would not change. And just for information purposes, I thought it'd be interesting for you to hear that in 2023, our prior year tax rate increase was 3.75% with an inflation rate of 6.5%. In 2022, our prior year tax rate was 1.64% when the inflation rate was 4.9%. And in 2021, our tax rate increase was 2.9% when inflation was 0.7%. So we have, over the past 2 years, been under that inflationary amount. So I thought that would be of interest to this group. At this point, do we want to have questions or?
I think we'll open it up to committee members. If there are any comments or questions, everyone understands the options before them so far. Yes, Grant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I guess it's more of a comment. Development charges. I think we have a study that we received a couple of years ago, and I think we really should be revisiting that fact. I'm not suggesting that industrial be part of that. Southfield didn't do that, but I think for the rest, we should be considering it, given the fact that growth should pay for growth, and a lot of our growth will be residential in the future, and that affects a lot of the services we produce. just a comment. I think it's probably
Mhm.
no way we can get that going for this tax year, but I think it's something going forward we should seriously consider.
I do appreciate staff in the past of establishing the growth reserve as a mitigation strategy in the absence of. And I understand what it's there about. And I do appreciate the one comment or one common theme throughout your three options is preserving. What'd you call that? If I can find the right slide again. Property reassessment reserve. Same value in all three options. Okay, so I appreciate that. But that's what's at risk. Okay. Counselor Sloan.
Thank you. Through you, Warden. Can we go back to the slide on corporate services, please?
Which one?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think there were two of them.
Okay, not the one with the.
The next one, please. Sorry. No, it was. There we go, I think. Hold on, I'm getting mixed up because I can't see. Anyway, so through you, Warden, to Jennifer, thanks very much for this. Question about corporate services. What's the total budget for corporate services, please?
The general budget for corporate services is at 1.1 million total operating and 40,000 capital.
Okay. Can
Oh,
I ask a
sorry.
question? Thank you, through you, Warden, to Jennifer. Can I ask a question about materiality with respect to the banking fees and what goes on this document versus what does not, please?
In banking fees, our banking with our provider is mostly free, like most of our banking services are free, but we have provincial offenses, but also permits, other documents that we have payment for. We're receiving that online. So we actually do have some costs related to the POS machines that are being used out there. And as more people want to pay with debit card, Visa card, and MasterCard, we're finding we're leaning on the Square more. We're leaning on Braintree, which is where our permits are being paid for. So there's a lot of increase in cost to us on the back end when that happens. So those are increases that we're seeing for banking. It's only a small amount.
So I guess, sorry, just to interrupt for a second, Jennifer. Do you think that's a material to have that on the document, the $220 for the banking charges?
Yes.
It is part of the number that we were increasing, so I could take it off if that's.
No. I just was wanting to know because when
It's
with
not
the-
material in this respect, no.
Okay, so another question through you, Warden, to Jennifer. When certain departments like legal put their services out, and this is a question through you, Warden, to Jennifer about revenue coming in. So if you're the legal department, do you have any expectations of how much you will bill out? In a sense, let's say that legal's working for another municipality. Do they have to meet, or when they put forward any ideas? I know we've got the costs on one side, Jennifer, but is there anything in the budget that they put forward to saying, you know, we want to bill out 70,000 this year in legal, we want to do X, we want to do Y? And I just wondered if you could answer that for me.
From when we do talk to our staff about those types of services, we're looking at the cost, certainly their capacity to deliver on certain items, whether or not there is a volume that they have or that they can contain within their services. And then we usually are conservative when it comes to revenue. Then we do every year look at what actually happens. And then at that point, we can increase revenue or decrease revenue depending on our historical knowledge. Because usually when we initially start a service, it's it's sort of a guesstimate of what their capacity is versus what they expect the uptake will be. So as we gain more experience, then we do refine our numbers.
Thank you. If I may, Warden, I can't see the screen, so may I continue?
Yes, please continue.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, and thank you, Jennifer, for your indulgence. So actually, a budget, it's taken from the year before. So let's say legal build out 50,000, that's put forward in the new budget, but it's not necessarily a number of hours or an expectation. And lastly, I just wondered, I looked at the appendixes. Is there any way that I could look at a detailed corporate services, the I think you said 1.4 million at some point? And that's my final question and comment. Thank you very much.
Yes, there should be a corporate services page there with the details of that. So yes, at any time you can look at that.
I can't find it, but I'll look again.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry. Any other questions?
That detailed corporate services, that was one of the appendixes to this
It's in-
particular package?
It's in Appendix G, I believe. It's through the 10-year plan.
Right. Okay.
They should be in alphabetical order, and if they are not, I apologize. It's possible that it got missed in this distribution.
Okay. Any further questions at this point from anyone? Okay. Since I did slip off and go to Appendix G and back, which page are we on?
I'm on slide 34. I don't know what page that is for you. It would look at, we're looking at the current year budget. It's a chart form. Pass it down, that one.
That one.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, let's resume.
all right. So before we look at the discretionary items that we're bringing forward today, I just wanted to give you a holistic view of where the budget lies. The total line at the top is your total budget. So we're at 101 million in revenue, 89 million in cost. Our net income is 12.2 million. And then we have 24 million in capital projects. So how do we fund those capital projects? If we go down to the bottom of the page, within the costs on your departments, we are funding our amortization fully. So we are able to, it's not a cash item. So that 12.7 million goes towards funding your capital projects. So the 12.2 in what we call net income surplus added to the 12.7 does fund your 24 million in capital projects plus your debt. At that point, we're looking at an excess of funds at this point of about 379,000. And this is to cover the discretionary funds that we're going to bring forward that you will be able to choose yes or no if you want to go forward with the funding of those items. Next slide. So yeah, we'll go into the discretionary items next. So there is a chart that Stephanie will bring up. It is Appendix D maybe in your package. Let me go to that. Appendix C, sorry. So at the first item on the list is available funds that we have to support the items below. At this point, council has approved a $35,000 increase for 3% on non-union. That amount has not been rolled into the budget. So we do have to take that out of the 379,000, leaves about $344,000 for you to have discretionary call on. Certainly, if we decide at some point that these items are not required, it would, at the end of the day, bring down the bottom line of the levy from 3.79 to a smaller amount that is not as high. Under corporate activities, item 2, I just wanted to keep that on the back burner that we will next year be taking in approximately $1 million of repayment of debt. Some of the amount that we will be receiving from the province is going to also offset our interest. So the actual costs are somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.7 million, but we will need to support that by approximately $1 million. Mileage rates, our mileage rate is going up as per our policy from to 70 cents per kilometer for the first 5,000 and then 0.64 after that. And that is going to be contained within our budget. We're not asking for any additional increases related to that. We will review that at the end of each year and determine whether or not we require it. Certainly, as we have additional vehicle in engineering, we won't be needing to fund mileage as opposed to that is a vehicle expense, which is a little bit lower. Medivy, our partner in ambulance services, they have asked for 2 additional supervisors with paramedic backfill. Certainly that is an increase of about $300 and some $1,000, but we only have to pay a particular share of that because we do share that cost with our partner, the City of St. Thomas, who does fund approximately a little less than half of that. It's based also on population. So that is, we consider that to be a discretionary item, but they have come forward and asked for it in the new contract. Number 5 is increases to the service levels related to BAM upstaffing. That 12-hour shift is now fully coming online in 2024. We agreed to that in advance, so that is non-discretionary, and I have included that in the budget. So anything in the column, the third last column is in the budget. Anything in the column, the second last column is not in the budget. So those are the items that we'd be focusing on. If it says 0, it's already included. But that doesn't mean I can't take it out, just so you just assumed. In the museum, the contracted position is supported by the levy, so that is no additional cost to the county and will be supported through donations. Human resources is adding a person, or they're not adding a person, they're adding an increased person. So when someone with additional skill set to support a vacancy that they have. And in order to do that, they will need $49,600. The majority of that fund is due to the loss of the accessibility coordinator and the additional revenue from Middlesex County that was coming in. Planning, this was something that will support the strategic delivery review and increase services for our municipal partners. We're adding a position to start somewhere June 1st, approximately, for our municipal partners once we get them hired and they are on board. Number 10, this was the original amount of our 2.5% placeholder that we put in place. I just wanted to bring that to your attention that was put in at approximately $50,000. The base wage, another additional amount for the homes to support union negotiations, approximately $285,000 is a guesstimate of ours. This is approximately what we will need in order to support ongoing negotiations for that. And that is not in the budget at this point. The 35,000, number 12, we did not add it to the budget, but we have accounted for it above. We have a request from our healthcare recruitment group. This is a partnership that we have with the city of St. Thomas to support doctor recruitment coming into our area. The budget that we had in there for this year was $73,226. That's in the budget, but they are asking for an additional increase of approximately $29,700. That is not in the budget at this time. One of the other areas that is discretionary, which is our community grant program. Each year, this is increased by approximately the CPI index. We have for 2024 in the budget, $74,000 to support that group. Having talked to Jenna, there's approximately $198,000 worth of grant requests this year. So it is a bit of a, it's not keeping up either from what we're looking at. So just so you're aware. We have a grant in there for the town crier, approximately $2,000. That is an ongoing one that's been for a while. Southwest Public Health, we talked about. We have 1.8 million in there for that group. Kettle Creek Conservation Authority. Under the planning department, we have approximately $40,000 there for Clean Water Initiative program that they have, and we've been supporting that for many years, approximately $40,000. It is still, again, anticipated for this year, but it is a discretionary item. When it comes to the museum, item number 18, we have a budget in there of $30,000. That budget has been there for many years. And this year they're coming forward asking for an increase of approximately $10,000 at the request of this committee. That was taken out of the budget. So we're now back to the 30,000 with a decision to be made on the 10. Under economic development, we have had a score in there each year, and this one does come to council every year for review and decision. At this time, they've asked for an increase in 2024 to go from 25,000 to 30,000. And so that is not in the budget at this time and is ready for review.
So just clarification, the 25 or the 30?
The
Which is
30.
The 30.
Nothing is in the budget because each year we take that out so that you can make a decision on that one.
Okay.
So this year they're asking for 30. So I've taken the whole amount out, the 25. So the incremental increase to that is about $5,000. We do have a membership for the Ontario Health Team, $5,100. They're asking for $100 more this year. $5,200 is where we'll be. Federation of Canadian Municipalities. These are all memberships that fall under the Corporate Services Department. 2024 request is 12,300, so we need approximately 1,143 to increase that one. It is included in the budget. AMO membership, another increase of 730 to be 6,400. Municipal Employee Pension Center. This is a group, and I have to lean on Amy for this one. This is a group that works with OMERS on behalf of employers to ensure that our voice is heard at the board table for the OMERS. It happens that they work with AMO in order to support any information that they require to lobby for employers. Municipal World, this is a group benefit. So with one subscription, we all have access to the information through Municipal World at 1.5 or 1,500. Ontario Good Roads, this is the Ontario Good Roads membership. And it's due and pending at this point at 1,300. Ontario Municipal Administrators Association, there's no increase for that one this year. St. Thomas Chamber of Commerce, I'm not anticipating an increase this year. Access Copy, I believe this is one that the libraries use heavily relating to copyrights of materials that we have access to. We don't have to go and get special permission every time we use something. The Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, this particular budget line item was very far behind. And so this year we caught it up to where it should be, which is at 23,500, and that increases the budget 12,500. It is in there. AMCTO, there's no anticipated increase. The Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators, no anticipated increase. We have a Community School Alliance membership. This is one that is a lobby group for Thames Valley District School Board in order to assist them in ensuring that rural schools are heard. And so this is a group that we've been supporting for a few years, not for a long period of time. The St. Thomas Golf and Country Club, this is a new ask. They've come forward with a letter. We provided that in Appendix D, asking for sponsorship in order to support the hospital MRI program through the golf tournament. And then we wanted to just bring to the attention of this group that the Warden's annual golf tournament is a discretionary item as well. And while we don't specifically pay for anything related to that other than maybe our shirts and our jackets, we do have a large amount of time invested in that. So it's approximately 300 hours for the event in order to make it a successful one. So that's between 18,000 and 15,000 in wages, benefits, and miscellaneous items. The hospital MRI, this was a request that came forward earlier that the budget committee decided they weren't going to support at this time. The request, I just wanted to bring that one forward, and hospice again, just so that you're aware that these are sitting out there and that we have not responded in this budget for an amount to give to them. So at the end of the day, if the budget committee approves everything, we'll be a little bit over budget, about $10,000. We feel that's fairly containable within the scope of the size of our budget. So we would, it would be recommended that you could approve everything that's on this list and you'd be fine. So at this time, I'll just pause.
I think so. Okay, discussion on this discretionary list. Yes, Mike, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. A question to Jennifer. I haven't heard much from the Community School Alliance group. Are they still active?
We received an invoice, so I'm assuming they are, but other than that, I really have not heard anything from them either. I was hoping that perhaps someone around the table would be in touch with them or understand what their scope is. I think actually Dawn did receive a phone call from a gentleman related to this particular item.
Okay, thank you. And if I could, I have attended some of their functions in the past. And in my municipality, we have not received an invite to anything. They always had something on the Sunday at Roma, an annual meeting or something, and it's just gone quiet. So I just question whether they're even doing anything at this point.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Grant.
Given that the provincial philosophy is changing in how they hopefully build schools in the future, so they say, maybe it's not as relevant now as it was because obviously it came out of the battle over the past 3 or 4 years with trying to build schools appropriately and in the right spot and keep them in rural communities. I think that the province has recognized that the rural community is valuable and they need to recognize that. But I haven't had any dealings with them in several years, so.
Right.
I know the Board of Education with Southwold Public School in particular understand that rural is rural and they need to recognize that, so. Yeah, I kind of agree with Mike on that one. That's maybe they're not relevant anymore.
Any sense, yes, Andrew, I was just going to ask a question out there from staff perspective of any sense of any downside risk of discontinuing that line item?
Through you, Mr. Warden, I don't believe so, but
Right.
I have to lean on the experience of the team because I don't have
Right.
direct contact with them.
Okay. Andrew, please.
Thank you, through you, Warden. Federation of Canadian Municipalities question. They have an annual conference. I heard about it, Roma. It's in Alberta, I think, this year. A, I don't know. I didn't know that we were a member. B, does anyone attend on behalf of council? And C, how long have we been a member of the organization, please?
That's a good question.
Through you, Mr. Warden, no one has attended to my knowledge. We have been a member of this for many years. I can't even tell you how many. And what was the third question? Sorry. I don't, from my perspective, I don't believe any from council has attended either. I really
Okay.
have no knowledge.
Fine. It just seemed like a lot when I've never heard of it. I mean, when we have Roma, we have AMO, and I get a lot of correspondence from them, as I'm sure the other people do. One more question through you, Warden, to Jennifer. I'm a bit of a stickler on how things go on a list. Jennifer, if you'll indulge me. We have the Warden's Golf Tournament, which is obviously a highlight of the year. But there was no mention of the Warden's Dinner. So where is that costed and how has that come through, please?
That is through the warden's budget, and it is a line item in the warden's budget.
Okay, so it's different. It's differentiated from the golf game, which isn't a line item in the Warden's budget.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, just going back with the FCM, the only experience that I can think of that's close to home is we've had some neighbors that have been past presidents of FCM. I'm thinking of Joanne Vanderheyden. And I heard, Mr. Preston suggesting that that's more the domain of the big city mayors at the FCM level. So whether it's relevant or germane to Elgin County, it's your call. I see some correspondence once in a while, but really I would have to agree with some of my colleagues here that I get more out of AMO correspondence, Roma, Good Roads, than I do from FCM. But it's whatever your discretion is. Yeah, Grant, please.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, you look at healthcare and trying to recruit doctors, I think that's a heck of a lot more important than FCM is right now on our list personally, but it's we're struggling in a lot of areas, and if no one's attending it.
Yes. Again, with I think it's a very similar comment with the school alliance. If it's not relevant, then I would assume if it becomes relevant, we can get involved again. The one item that's not on the list is one that I'm a little bit passionate about, is I would like to see the budget committee, if they would, is to support SCORE membership. I know that there has been a flurry of activity in terms of correspondence floating back and forth between the various member partners. And I know that the executive director has sent out correspondence, and hopefully every member of council has received some of that, trying to espouse on what it is that SCORE actually does. I know that there was a bit of an effort trying to get the member community or member partners to perhaps withdraw and redirect funding to Western Ontario Wardens. I think it's backfired. My understanding is that Brant County is in, Norfolk County is in, Wellington County's budget committee is recommending to the county to be in. I'm not sure where Elgin sits Bernie didn't give me any particular indication. And I'm hoping that Elgin would support it. Yes, please.
I'll jump into the fire. Um, I haven't seen a benefit, to be honest, very little benefit, and it seems that if Western Wardens is doing, it's not identical, but similar. They have Katie on board now, which has changed how Western Wardens works to some extent. I am struggling with it, to be honest. That's just my opinion.
Yep, that's fair. Going back through, and of course, the board of directors has had to struggle with this. And I think the organization could probably do a better job of communicating. But in terms of if the organization was simply an advocacy role, you're right. It could be construed as a duplication. But SCORE is more than that. It's the project management side and the fact that they're able to take provincial or federal grant dollars and leverage them into projects, something YLC cannot do. YLC is a great organization in terms of capturing attention when you've got 15 county or county membership, and you can go in and talk to the minister. But their agreement level is mainly items that are broadly based across the province, which are fairly easy to agree on. When you get down to the smaller 1 million population size of the GTA of what's the 5-county region of SCORE represents, there's the opportunity to get in on those smaller projects where there's better agreement across the area in order to move forward. I'm talking about Southwest Community Transit is one. The FreshBook or the former Food Hub project is another. And I know that according to the executive director and hopefully the correspondence that was sent out, there are several grants in play at the moment. And there's a number of ministry projects out there who are looking at it saying, we've got a partnership here. Are we going forward or not? I think at the moment we've got some of that mollified. There was that piece of correspondence that originated out of Oxford, created a lot of damage, but I'm a believer in it, and I know I'm sitting on the other side of the table. Let's let it go to council and see what they say.
Excuse me.
Yep. Grant, Andrew, any comments or? Okay. Yes, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just so I better understand what the monies we give to SCORE is used for, it's not just for administering. They actually use some of them dollars that Elgin County would contribute to fund projects and leverage further funding. Is that right?
That's what they do. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what they do. Of the 5 counties, and they were living on $25,000 for 12 years, whatever. And they'll take some of that funding and they use it to leverage grant money that's coming through. There are monetary contributions that have to accompany some of the grants that they're getting. And they're using that to leverage this kind of funding and turning it into projects. What they do. I was really interested to learn, and I'm sure Councilor Noble, we learned this back in December of what the total breadth of what they're involved in. I was not aware at the time that SCORE is involved in the Ministry of Labor task team, which is setting up the labor component for both the battery plants here at Volkswagen as well as the plant down there in Windsor. I thought that was astounding that kind of reach is out there. And there's a lot of collaboration between SCORE and the Western Ontario Wardens on issues such as the leave to construct thresholds. That was something that Brant County brought forward, and Western Ontario Wardens was able to jump on it as well. And hopefully through that collaborative effort, we can get some movement, move that threshold up. So I think there's value, but I've been around the organization for 9 and 10 years. If you need some further information, I can dig it up for you. So we're looking at the discretionary stuff. Is there something that we should go back and revisit, Jen? We kind of glanced over it at top was regarding the Southwest Public Health. We didn't deal with the issue of, do we need to set up a contingency allowance? Now, is that something that staff are thinking that even through our growth reserve, we can cover off, should it be? Or do you think that we should set up a contingency for Southwest Public Health? Grant, any insight on that? Whatever you're thinking. It's hard to say, eh?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's, I hope not. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
From my perspective, I would like to just maybe send a signal that there isn't any more money so that we set it
Okay.
at 1.8. That be sort of the threshold that we set this year. You've asked for that. We're granting it. And then if there's another ask, I hope that the board would support us and other municipalities in a cap, at least through a message.
No, it's not a bad strategy. And again, if something does hit the fan, there is something still within the growth reserve.
And if there's any particular areas where we save money or we have some surplus, we can absorb that, but it's not something that we should, I don't feel taxed for.
Okay. I like that advice. Let's stroke that one off the list. Any thoughts around the budget committee on the particular options, like options 1, 2, or 3? In other words, taking that, taking the growth and from the commercial growth and using either putting it away or using part of it to underwrite your tax rate or using more. I'm
Correct.
not sure that you want to take us all the way down to a 1%. I think that might be irresponsible. And actually where we're sitting at a 3.79 isn't that bad. I'm looking at BAM at 11.3, so. I'll entertain your thoughts, like we can compromise and come to the middle someplace. Yeah, please, Grant.
I'm waiting for somebody else to.
How about me? From my perspective, it has been the practice of this council to set aside growth. And that is why for I strategized on that as well, what would be best, without any further direction or reason to put it into service. I leaned on past practice. So our strategy has always been to set it aside. Yes, it's an unusual year, but I also wanted to keep at the forefront the fact that we do have that large debt coming online with Terrace Lodge. So we will need to also fund that next year along with additional costs. So not that I want to use it to fund debt, but certainly it would support the tax rate in any regard. The additional item too is that if we don't need it, we could continue to put it away into growth, so that there would be a nice reserve starting to be built on that end. So just because it's there doesn't mean you have to spend it. Certainly, we have a lot of pressures coming down the line that I can see. So certainly to build that base is something that we should be looking at. If we're future thinking, then that's certainly looking to the future.
So from a principal point of view, take the advice, stay the course. Yeah, Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. We have choice, which is an enviable position.
Yeah.
I wish as a lower tier mayor, I was in that position. So with a 3.3 CPI, I I can support option number one
Mhm.
at 3.79. We are in uncertain times, and if I look through history, decisions like this could have been made better in the past, and we don't want to fall into that trap as well. So option number one would be my support. Thank you.
Andrew?
I'm muted, sorry. Thank you. Through you, Warden. What's the time frame on this? I know we go back to full council with it, I believe, but is this the last meeting of the budget committee?
Staff?
That depends on the decisions of this group. I believe that it would be, our next steps would be to take this to the full council to present it using the budget document. That's the next step, is to get that finalized and forward it to the committee or to council. And then whether or not, and we're kind of getting a little ahead of ourselves in the presentation, but there's also the decision, are we going to go out for public consultation? Is that something that is the desire? Are we going to recommend that to council as an option? Last year's public consultation was quiet, to say the least. So whether or not that's something, we've already sort of done the budget survey. So we sort of did it at a front end as opposed to a back end. I think it served us well this year. But that, again, this is all up to this group.
Yes, Andrew, please.
Sorry, thank you, through you, Jennifer, or through you, Warden, to Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. And I know last year we didn't have it, but we talked in one of our meetings about a hybrid solution. But I just feel it's important to maybe have a little more discussion and to see what we went to the public at the start, which I know you did, and gave us all the results of that. I would prefer or would suggest to my colleagues if they would consider a bit of a public discourse on this before we take it to council with the options. Just my comments. I have a couple of questions and would like to do a couple of just a sidebar discussions with Jennifer on one or two items. But overall, I mean, I think we're in a pretty good place, but just a little more. Now we're closing to the finish line. I wonder if we couldn't just cross the T's and dot the I's before it went to council for final. Thank you.
Okay, then, so Andrew, you're suggesting maybe give it a little more time for reflection, come back, maybe the committee meet briefly again before we take it to
Well,
council?
Sir, or Warden, I agree, and something along those lines, but I was thinking that, you know, public participation, even if we had a budget meeting where we advertise it to the public, is their opportunity. I know last year the staff put a tremendous amount of effort in, which was looked like an exceptional event. And I know that it wasn't as well attended, and I'm sure that causes, you know, some frustration because it was first class. And I felt badly that we didn't have more people. I just wondered if there was a hybrid solution where we made some time available online for people, but just to add that layer of transparency so that our decision gets one extra layer of input. But I defer to my colleagues on next steps. Thank you, Warden.
Yep, thank you for that. I think there is some planning for a virtual, not necessarily a virtual presentation, but making the documents available online with the commenting period. But I thought that was after it went to council with the draft.
And this is, to be honest, this is our first year where we would have had a public consultation after the budget committee. Last year, it was a full council.
Yes,
The year before that, it was, I don't believe we did public consultation. So this is new to us. So I think that we're in a situation where we could do a public consultation, but I don't know if that has to go to council first. No? Blaine is shaking his head no, so I'll take that as next step. So we could tidy up the budget document and then do a period of public consultation, or have an open budget meeting where we are all here, and then we can do like a Zoom. People could Zoom in if they want, or attend the office, and that can be through the day or in the evening, whatever works for this group.
I think that's a good compromise. Okay, so I think we can plan that way. Again, just to be present as a budget committee, but also, you're right, people want to zoom in and ask, or people want to attend the office and ask, and we can go through it that way. Yes, Grant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I can agree with that. I wouldn't want to do what we did last year.
No.
That was just a waste of time. So I think we can work it through this way might be better.
Yep, I think so too. Yeah, that'll work for you, Andrew? Okay, good. So now we're getting down to, I guess, back down to the discretionary stuff. So are we talking about some consensus about perhaps discontinuing the School Alliance, discontinuing the FCM? That's a recommendation to council. I think I'm hearing some good arguments for keeping the health recruitment partnership at the enhanced level. Is that a 1-year thing or is that an ongoing grant? Do you know?
The health recruitment.
Yeah. Ongoing. All right. Well, absolutely. And I know that we just cannot compete with our larger urban counterparts on that incentivization type program, but do the best we can. Help me understand, Jen, item 18, the request from the Arts Gallery. If I understand it, the $10,000 is not in the budget?
No, at the last budget meeting, it was, but then it was requested to be removed. We do have 30,000 in there
Yeah.
from, which has been our traditional historical support of that group.
Right.
This 10,000 is an additional ask, so that we would have to, you'd have to determine if that's to be included.
What's council thinking? Cost of doing the businesses keep going up, but at the same token, is it a case that is this the business that we're supposed to be in? It's a shared arrangement with St. Thomas. I don't know.
Yeah.
Andrew, please.
I was just gonna say I'd defer to Councillor Jaguar, who sits on the board. Maybe.
Well, again, we can either include in the current draft, or we can leave it out and let council make the decision at that time. Make sure the attention is drawn to it. If that works. Yes, Grant, please.
I know early on, Councillor Jaguar did have concerns with
Mhm.
it, and I don't know where that's gone, but in reality is, I think most art galleries are privately run, aren't they? But I don't know. I guess there's a limit,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, do you want to leave it as is at this point and let council make the decision, like just as highlighted as a point for council to weigh in on?
Certainly, I think Brian Michelli may be here, hiding in the corner there. He would have probably some insight on this membership. Did you want to speak to that, or?
Well, yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The amount that the Public Arts Center is receiving is the $30,000. That's funded through the museum's membership line of the budget. And that amount, I believe, was established in 2008. So I think the request from the Public Arts Center is a reflection of what the buying power was in 2008 relative to what it actually achieves today. So that's about, the broader context I can bring to it.
Okay, thank you for that. So it's a request for keeping up with the power of inflation. Comfortable with just leaving it as is and let council have the final say? Okay, which brings me back down to score. We can leave it out as you want, or put it in, let council have the final say. Like, I'm quite passionate about it. Mike.
I could live with leaving it as is and council final say.
Okay, can we bring more information forward to convince you?
Well, you provided that to me on score around this
All right.
committee meeting, so
Yep.
I think perhaps all of council should hear that same information.
Okay. That's another one for highlighting then, all right? Okay. What else have we got to cover?
Just gonna look at, this group is okay with number 11 then, coming in,
11.
number 13 coming into the budget. Number 11 is the, potential increase in wages.
We're talking about 11 or we're talking about 13?
11.
11. That one's, oh, that one's not in the budget.
No, it isn't. That's a potential. 13 is not in the budget, which is the partnership, which we talked about. We want to let that flow through though, right?
So the base is, the enhancement is not. That's what you're telling me?
Correct.
Thinking I've heard from some members of council to include the enhancement. But again, that's for council's consideration. I think I interpreted that right. Number 11, yeah, that's a tough one. This one, basically, if this would reduce, this is to reduce
We-
corporate exposure should it
Yeah.
happen.
Yes.
It's recommended.
Recommended, yeah.
All right.
And then no other changes related to the Warden's Golf Tournament, the Classic Golf Tournament, requests from the St. Thomas Golf and Country Club, the hospital or the hospice.
I think the hospice and hospital, this counts, or this committee had already decided that we recommend not including, but that's a council decision. Again, if those are the things to be brought back for council consideration.
Okay.
Yeah. It's curious, I don't recall seeing the Wards Golf Tournament in here before, but that's all right. I have no concerns with it.
It was, we were asked about discretionary items, that particular one is, so.
Okay. Is there any, Andrew, please?
Through you, Warden, quick question to my colleagues that have been here longer. When it comes to these large donations like the hospice or the MRI, when is the last time that Elgin County entered into an agreement such as this with an external agency? You know, obviously it's healthcare, it's beneficial for our communities, but when's sort of the last time Elgin County got involved with a project like this, please? Just for my interest in information. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Grant, you probably got a more handle on that one. It was prior to 2019.
Yeah, it was a 10-year commitment to the hospital for the expansion.
Yeah.
I think that commitment just ended a year ago. So 10 years previous to that. It was a significant, 1.5,
3.
3.5, I can remember. It's been too long, but healthcare hasn't changed the way it's being funded. And that I think people need to realize that if we want a progressive hospital in our area, there's a cost. And I don't think the province give us any change in how that is happening or will happen in the future. Hospice, no, it's we're one of the few communities that don't have a hospice anymore or don't have one, and it's I think they're getting closer to their goal, but you know, I think at some point we have to step up and help out a little bit. I'm not sure where St. Thomas is at. I know they're having that discussion as far as a monetary You have to, it's just, we hope the province is going to change. I don't think the province is going to change. That's the problem. And healthcare could change in the future where private clinics may be able to do this, provide MRI services, but MRI services are a huge commitment. And the worst thing is the technology changes about as fast as we pay the loan off, the next version comes out, so. It's, I think it's important in our community, and just thinking that the province will step up some days, it's just wishful thinking.
Yeah. I appreciate the comments, Deputy Warden, and are there needs? Yes, they are. And I got to keep thinking back. Are these things that are within the wheelhouse of municipal service delivery? And I'm struggling with that. I really am. We know that a tremendous fundraising efforts are going on out there. There is wealth in the community, and I'm sure it's being tapped. Those that are contributing get a tax receipt, which is nice. And I'm not, no, I'm kind of wondering whether we are qualified around the table, the 9 of us, the 4 of us at this point, of making charitable donations on behalf of the residents. If they want to do it, let them do it. But anyway, it's just my comments. Yes, Andrew, please.
Just quickly, and thanks for the clarification, Grant. So it seems to me, we have $100 million budget, and 1% would be $1 million, and over 10 years it would go into the decimals. So what I look at with respect to an MRI, and again, I don't have the background, and Grant, you've explained it. I believe there's a bigger question of what the county should be responsible for. But if you look at an MRI machine, if that was going to attract doctors, right, to the Elgin General, we pay another organization which is helping, provide to sort of highlight the need for doctors in rural communities. Is there a business case scenario when an MRI comes to Elgin County that translates to, not just through the quality of life? We talk about, the people of Elgin, and I realize there's questions on who uses the hospital, be they in the east of the county or the west, but it's perplexing because I think we all agree that there's benefit to it, but hospice, MRI, there's probably some other requests, but it does seem that it's difficult what lens to use to look at the request. But for me, it's bringing forward doctors. It's better communities. If we have an MRI in St. Thomas, God willing, we won't need to use it, but a lot of our people will, and a lot of the people that live in the communities will. So it requires some more thought, perhaps. But again, my 2 cents.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Grant, please.
Councillor Sloan, you're correct. When you bring in cutting edge technology, you bring those doctors along with it. And St. Thomas Elgin General is a stroke unit now. MRI is critical to stroke, and with my father had a stroke. By the time they truck him to London to do the MRI and come back, it's too late, right? You need the machine there on the spot at the time. And that's the reality. If we don't land the MRI, does the stroke unit stay? And does it end up going back to London? And the ramifications of that are fairly significant for a aging population.
Yep. Mike, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I think this is a conversation that, and I'm a stickler on that too. We're put here to look after municipal services. The fact is the world's changed and it's not going back. So I think, I know at our level at the lower tier, and certainly around here, we got to come to grips with that. And how do we want to proceed? Do we just say no to all of that, or do we look to the future and say, this is the roadmap that we foresee, and either we engage in that or we draw a line in the sand and say absolutely nothing. We fix roads and bridges and that's it. But I think we really need to have that conversation because everything is upside down now and we're not getting back to the way it used to be. Well, that's just my comments. I think there's a real need for this conversation on what the county is willing to provide for the citizens of Elgin County.
Good point. Absolutely good point. And how do we afford it? And, I keep going back to my residents and saying, well, there are two ways we can impact the budget for you. We can either cut services or we can grow the assessment base in which we tax and spread the cost of these services across. So everything's linked and interconnected. We need to grow the assessment base in order to, if we're taking on projects like this. But you're right. Yeah. So I think it's council's decision to make on those ones. Where are we now, Jen?
We should be going back now to the presentation, I think. And then we can look at the slide that has these items in it, which Stephanie gets that up. It's 30, yeah. So, one before that. There we go. So if we take our original budget that we presented earlier and we wrap all of these items in, we were at approximately 10,700 over budget. If we're taking out the FCM and we're taking out the school, we have a little bit of surplus, approximately $5,000 surplus, which is well within the realm of where we would land. That would enable us to include all of those items in the budget, but still, if council wants to take them out, we can. So the next one is our bylaw. When we bring forward the bylaw for the budget, we're looking at the landfill ratio, and there are some grants that we have given in the past. So the municipalities of West Elgin and Dunwich are given provisional grants for municipally owned portion of the property that they have that contain landfills. The origin of this grant is the result of the establishment of the new landfill class in 2016, into which MPAC moved these properties from their previously exempt status into then paying tax. So the amount of grant will vary from year to year, and it is the tax rate as the tax rate increases. So the bylaw is adjusted every year in order to accommodate for the grant that we give for these landfill properties. So as a result, no changes suggested for the bylaw. And so we will review what was required in the prior bylaw. I put in there the historical report to council in Appendix E that supports this process. So next, the budget document we have is included for your review. It is Appendix F, and we do have some areas still to refine in that budget document before it would be posted for public consultation. But there is opportunity for the budget committee to make some recommendations as it results to what that document contains, and if they want to have any changes to the contents as they are currently there. So I didn't know whether there was anything that the committee wanted to be added or renewed or changed related to that budget document. Had a chance to review it, or do you want to review it this time? I know it's getting into your lunch, so I don't want to keep you.
Well, I think we've kind of outlined where we're willing to rest at this moment, but there are some items that I think you need to keep flexible within the document itself, such that these are the purview of council to make the final say on.
Okay. So our next steps, we'll compile and finalize the budget document with recommendations from our meeting today. And then whether or not these two items can be interchangeable if we have a period of public consultation first and committee recommended options, and then present the final document to council with any other items that they would want included in that presentation. So from what I'm hearing today, sounds like we want to do public consultation first with another budget committee meeting. And then do we want to go through the proposed budget document at that meeting, or?
I would say that as long as your proposed document, your draft document is updated and available, and it's published or I should say it's online or available for the public to take a look at. And when we meet, we are meetings, again, to address the public should they attend. If they don't, it'll be a real short meeting.
Okay. All right, that will be the next
Hopefully
step.
even members of council would attend for clarification at that point too. Yes, please, Grant.
Thank you, Warden. Could I ask that the two big asks from the hospice and STEG be part of that public process so people have their input into whether they want us to see a full funding, partial funding of the ask, or I think it's appropriate.
I think that was part of the intention. Yeah, those are things that, there's a list of things that we've gathered that the council needs to, at the end of the day, make their final decision on. But it's a good idea, and gets the consultation from the public as well. Okay,
Okay. And last but not least, the recommendations for today will be that I'm assuming option 1 be used as a basis for the calculation for the levy tax rate for increases in 2024, that the discretionary items being included as presented, that we have no changes to the ratios or landfill grants for West Elgin or Dutton Dunwich, and that the final budget book be prepared for presentation to the public,
yes.
and that the public, the committee recommends a period of public consultation by way of a public meeting and by posting this online for, is there a period of time that you would want it posted online, like a week, 2 weeks, 1 week?
1 week, I think, is sufficient.
Prior to that meeting, and then it would go to council for final approval.
And I think, do you need something in that recommendation, Jen, again, to highlight within the document those areas for additional consideration for council?
Yes, we can talk to,
Steg,
yeah.
hospice.
we can speak to the, that under the recommended discretionary items be presented
All right,
as included. So I will include the entire list again, and move some of those items into current budget.
sure.
And then some of the other ones they can make a decision on. And when it comes to the 2 large donations, it doesn't preclude us from not raising the levy, but looking at ourselves in the mirror and maybe at year end, making a decision as to whether or not you want to put some of that towards these options. That doesn't mean that we can put it away into reserve, which is something that we always like to do, because that does help the levy in the future. But certainly it would not force us to raise the levy in order to raise those funds to give to the groups. It would be sort of a retroactive commitment that we will look at our budget at year end, and if there is surplus, we can provide that, but if not. So it's just another option to think about.
Okay. Yes, please, Mike.
Question to Jennifer, would that, you're going to look at the year end 2023?
Yes, as we get into the year end, that would be something that we would at year end then discuss. We have a certain amount of surplus, but what is your recommendation for that use of surplus? And then at that time, that conversation can be had, and we can keep track of how much we have donated or have not donated, depending on what your thoughts are on how long we go with that. 10 years, I don't know. I don't think that's a good reasonable ask, but certainly there may be other options like that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
I think I'm done.
Okay. Anything
One
else from
quick
committee
question.
members? Yes, Grant, excuse me, Andrew?
Thank you, Warden, through you, just so that I know, when we go to the public, are the three options listed? Just wanted clarification on that, please.
Yes, I can do that. Certainly, certainly this is based on option one. But I can add the other options.
And just for further clarification, I was under the impression, and I wasn't sure if the finance committee gave its recommendation of which option that would then go to full council, whether full council would have the opportunity to look at all three options. Thank you. My final question.
I would say, why not? It's their budget after all. We're just making recommendations. I would think that I have no problem with disclosure of the options out there to anybody. I think the committee needs to be prepared to explain why they're recommending not underwriting the full levy with any particular growth or the cap. I'll get it right there. The commercial growth. And that's just trying to be responsible and prudent moving forward. So, but yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. Everything should be totally transparent. Okay. Does that get us where we need to be for today? Perfect.
All right.
Have you got something for us, Jenna?
Be it resolved that option one be used as the basis to calculate the budget levy tax rate increase for 2024, and that the recommended discretionary items be included as presented, and that no changes to the ratios or landfill grants to West Elgin or Dutton Dunwich be made for the 2024 taxation year, and that the final budget book be prepared for presentation to the public, and that the committee and that the budget document be posted online for public consultation for a period of 1 week, to be followed by a hybrid public consultation meeting to be held at the next budget committee meeting prior to final presentation to county council.
Okay, that sounds about right. Anyone interested in moving that? Counselor Hentz. Seconding, Deputy Warden Jones. All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. I don't believe we have any other business or correspondence or closed meeting items. Brings us down to adjournment. When do you think how long do you need to get us ready for the next meeting? You need 3 weeks, couple weeks?
2 would be great.
When's our next council meeting? Well, actually, we don't want to do it in the middle of the day, do we? We want to pick something probably
In
evening, early evening? Yeah,
Like a 5 to 7 or something.
you bring pizza.
Me? I was gonna bring donuts.
February 8th?
8th.
That's next Thursday. That's not enough, is it?
No.
No. 15th would not work for me or Mark.
14th is not a good day.
Why not? What's happening that day? Well, it's just council nights for us.
Oh, on
Okay.
Thursday?
Yes. First and third Thursdays.
22nd. I'm throwing it out there. It's getting into 3 weeks, so. When's council?
It's Tuesday night?
But we want to have a period of a week before that to post the budget.
You got a point. So you'd be looking at the 20th then.
Do we need to post that in advance, though? Yes.
Probably. February 13th. 5? 13th at 5? Okay. February 13th, 5 PM? For the next budget committee with the public open house? That's not a week? All right, just doing some negotiating there, Andrew, and I think we're coming up with a proposed date of the next meeting for February the 13th. Probably an evening, 5 PM. Okay? All right. Now we're cooking. Jenna?
Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 12:53 PM to meet again on February 13th, 2024 at 5 o'clock PM.
Okay, do we have a mover and seconder for that? Okay, Counselor Hentz. And Counselor Sloan. All in favor? We are carried and we are adjourned. Thank you for joining us today.